Hello and welcome to Search to Crit. My name is Jay, and today this is the new podcast that I'm currently hosting, and I'm joined by a special guest today whose name is, well, I'm going to call you War Corgi, but I guess Michael might be preferred. It's your choice. How are you today?
Yeah, we're going to go with Michael.
Michael today, but it is from the YouTube channel War Corgi, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. I just want to, this obviously is episode 1 of this new podcast. I just want to talk about like the genesis of it very briefly. And War Corgi, Michael being here is relevant to that as well. Essentially, I did a podcast called Attack Legion back in the day with Andy and Katie. Neither of those two people really play Star Wars Legion, and that left me with a little bit light on the ground with content for a podcast. I didn't want to just get on there and ramble myself. That would essentially be a YouTube video. And for those of you who don't know, this is going to go up on YouTube. It's going to be on iTunes as well, and I've got my own website, which is going to be like tabletop.oddity.com/search-to-crit. And yeah, so the reason that this even exists is I always wanted to bring back the podcast, but I couldn't really do it. And then 2 things happened. There's a fellow YouTuber called Glass Half Dead who does like kill team stuff, and he started doing like an interview series. And then Mr. Michael, I say Mr. Michael, sounds weird, but Michael, we were in the chat for the 5th Trooper Adepticon live stream, and you were very, well, I was going to say insistent, but that sounds aggressive. You were talking about how you thought YouTubers should maybe stick together, and so I thought, right, well, I can combine all of these things into a podcast that is essentially an interview series. And that is why we are here today. I sound like a priest there. But yes, so that's why we're here. So thank you to Michael. You obviously do YouTube. You've got your the War Corgi channel. You started about like middle of 2017 doing Team Yankee, but I'm going to let you carry on from there. Go on, tell me about your YouTube channel if you'd be so kind, please.
Okay, I'm going to start off by saying I like to think of myself as passionate more than insistent. So when I talk about the YouTubers sticking together, what I see over on the podcast side is those guys are thick as thieves and they really support each other. While on the YouTube side, I think we have a much more diverse group of characters that produce YouTube content. And part of that diversity is just geographical dispersion. So I think we need to do a better job of communicating. This is a great first step, Jay. I'm so excited to be on episode 1 of Search to Crit, and excited to be here. But as far as my YouTube channel, you're right, it started in June 2017. It was actually the brainchild of my best friend Simon over here in Germany. We were playing a game that was new to us called Team Yankee, and both of us had looked on YouTube for Team Yankee content, and there was some content on there, but not a lot.
I'm not too familiar with. Sorry. I'm not too familiar with Team Yankee. Is it an alternate universe war game? I don't quite understand it. Go on.
So it's a World War III alternate future set in the 1980s, so alternate past.
Right. Okay.
15mm scale game. So it features, all the weapon systems that you would have seen on both the NATO and Warsaw Pact sides. Which made it very interesting for the both of us. It has German forces, UK forces, of course Americans and Soviets. And they've expanded a lot since I've kind of moved on from that game. But, it's a smaller game compared to either Star Wars Legion or especially a Warhammer 40K.
Sure.
So there wasn't a lot of content out there, and Simon thought it'd be fun to do that. And so after we played a game, he went home for the night, and I texted him the next morning, like, Simon, okay, we got our YouTube channel all set up. I'm ready to go. It's called War Corgi. And he was just shocked because it was...
I have to ask about the name. I have to ask about the name. It's inevitable.
We'll come back to that. But,
okay, go on.
Simon's German sensibility is like, you Americans, you just push forward with stuff. We just had this idea yesterday, and we should have come up with a pro and con list and decide exactly how we're going about it. It's like, nope, we Americans are pushing straight forward. We already got the channel. Let's start recording. And that's essentially what we did. We just started recording our games and learned on the go.
Sure. I sort of side more with the German sensibility there. I'm all like, I need to think about things first. I have pro cons. I like that. I'd have a list. I'd have like point scoring systems. Then you moved on to 40K. And obviously, I think you had a 40K background before that. So, but yes. We'll jump a bit forward to October 2018, where you started playing Star Wars Legion, and that is the game of choice there. What a great choice you've made there.
Man, no regrets there, that's for sure. And it's all thanks to a guy named Dan Adam who runs the Paint All the Minis podcast. There's also an associated Facebook group, and now we've started a YouTube channel. He had this idea to bring together a bunch of collaborative content producers and put all this content in one place. And so he had seen my Warhammer 40,000 battle reports and he'd seen my Team Yankee battle reports. So he reached out to me out of the blue and offered me kind of a position on their team, to which I instantly accepted. And as part of that, he offered to send me the Star Wars Legion core set. Now, Star Wars Legion was a game I had seen. I am a huge Star Wars fan, as is my wife and my whole family. But I didn't think I had the right environment to start playing a new game over here in Germany. It's difficult as an American who speaks very poor German, as you've seen on my channel, to make friends. And, you know, when you start a new game, you're normally having to recruit your friends into it. But since it was free, I decided I was going to give it a whirl. And as soon as I got it and opened it up, I realized that this game was a winner. And, you know, Alex Davey, who created it, did a phenomenal job. And I was immediately hooked.
Sure. And I think, I mean, he's talking about building a community. In a game, something like Star Wars Legion, there's not necessarily an already existing community base. Sometimes you either have to drag in your friends, and if you're in a, I mean, even now where I'm in the UK, like I know people, but those people don't play Star Wars Legion. I have to go to specific stores and try and, like, we've got like a Legion night at Element Games that we have to go and try and build up the community like that. So I can especially imagine being in Germany. How long have you been in Germany? Do you mind me asking why you're there?
So this is my second tour in Germany. I've been here for 2.5 years, which makes my lack of ability to speak German even more shocking.
It's not a shock to me. I'm pretty sure you could put me in another country for decades and I would have no grasp of the language.
Well, it definitely helps. So, like, my trained language is Russian, and if as long as I got a couple of shots of vodka in me, my Russian immediately gets better. So.
I think that might apply to literally everybody, but
Exactly.
So yeah, you Star Wars Legion. Obviously, I'm personally really a massive fan of it. Had you known about Star Wars Legion beforehand, or were you just so into 40k that it hadn't really been on your radar?
So I had seen it, but I don't have like a local game store here like I did in the States where I would be exposed to new products. My wife and I do play the Imperial Salt game, which has a campaign mode quite a bit. And, you know, I've always liked Fantasy Flight games. We play a number of their games. And so I was aware of it, but I hadn't even seen a battle report or an introduction video or anything for it. So I knew it was out there, but I didn't have any details on what kind of game it was.
Sure. I mean, that sort of makes sense. I mean, we both do YouTube, so let's talk a little bit about YouTube, I guess, is the main subject here that we could do. How are you finding doing the battle reports for your channel? Because your channel is mostly battle reports, I think that's fair to say, and obviously they are fantastic battle reports. I enjoy watching them myself. Which I've got to say, I don't normally watch battle reports, so I've actually watched some of yours, and I think that's because a lot of like battle reports, if the you know the static camera shot and it's like sped up gameplay, I can feel a little bit out of the battle, and sometimes you can be, if you're doing the handheld camera, which is the way I do mine and you do yours. Most of it, you know, I know you've done the static camera for your deployment and stuff like that, but most of the time we're holding it in our hands, and sometimes that can feel a bit discombobulating. Whereas I feel like you particularly do a nice job of not making that the case. Do you know what I mean? Like, I understand what's going on the table.
So, you know, that's the 2 years of experience and some really solid editing programs that my wife got me for the channel. Really helps me out there. But it's kind of funny because I do what I would refer to as long-form battle reports. So you get to see everything. And one of the nice things about YouTube is there's a growing amount of content for Star Wars Legion. So you got people like Krabick, who does the short-form battle reports, where he just kind of goes over what happened every turn sped up, which is nice for some people. And then you got me on the other end of the spectrum that does like the whole thing. Master of the Force is another one that does the whole battle report. And it's kind of funny because when I did Warhammer 40k battle reports, I actually did short form battle reports where we took out all the dice rolling because you roll so many dice in Warhammer 40k, it doesn't really matter, right? No one wants to see, well, I don't want to see, 1,000 dice rolled. But with Star Wars Legion, it was really important to show the dice rolls because that's where a game can really swing,
sure,
whether or not Luke makes those saves. So I had to develop a way to film that along with the rest of the battle.
Yeah, definitely. In some battles, you can roll a set of dice, and the outcome can be so random that if you didn't record it, it would be hard to believe. So I think in one of my last part reports, I think with Boba Fett, I rolled something like 8 or 10 blocks, I literally every single one, and it was just like, oh, I'm really glad I got that on camera, because otherwise, it wouldn't have had that impact. But if you've got the reaction of the dice and all that kind of stuff, it makes a lot more sense. So. For sure, I agree with that. I think there are rooms for different kinds of battle reports, I think, but definitely the handheld one where we understand what's going on is, I think, personally a great format. And specifically on YouTube, how do you feel about the YouTube community? Because we have, you said we don't really interact a lot. I think that's probably true. I know Crabok did an interview with Hurry Nick a couple of weeks back, but Hurry Nick, he's predominantly like X-Wing, but he's got a second channel where he's doing like Legion stuff, that kind of stuff. But apart from that, I hadn't really seen any crossover between any of the YouTubers doing Star Wars Legion. I know I've actually been in brief discussion with somebody who lives in like Norwich. I think I can't they're called Mentally 14, I think, and they've got a special name for the channel.
Oh yeah.
They're in the UK, so in theory I could possibly go there. And there's maybe a tournament in Norwich that I might try and get to. So maybe one day I'll actually be able to do something there. But and I know you're in Germany, and we have said that maybe if there's an event over there, I will travel over there. If there's a rally point, I will come. But yeah, how do you feel like the YouTube community specifically? We don't really interact that much. What would you like to see, I guess, would be a good question.
I'd like to see us all retire and like move to this same small town and near St. Louis, Missouri, and just play games together and record them. But obviously that's not possible. So, this is a great start. And then I think what's going to be important is when Legion continues to grow and we start having bigger and bigger tournaments in the Adepticon, which was a great event, hosted by Brendan Franz of Critical X podcast fame, with some help from LJ Pena, and live streamed by the Fifth Trooper Network. As those events become bigger and bigger, I think it's going to be important that we as YouTubers get together at those events and talk amongst ourselves about what's working for us, what's not working for us, where there's some holes in what we're doing in our content creation, and places where we can just improve as a group, because I think we are a vital role in building Star Wars Legion as a game right now. We're certainly not at the spearhead tip of building Star Wars Legion, but I know, at least from my channel, a lot of people have come to Star Wars Legion and are buying into this game. We generate a lot of excitement for it. We help people understand the rules for it, and we provide context to what the game is all about. So I think we have a responsibility to each other and to the Legion community as a whole to make sure we're doing the best job as a group that we can possibly do. So it's more about communication than I'm looking for.
Sure, I think there's definitely a lot of truth to that. When to me, it feels like the podcasts have a good. I think partly because of the location, as you said before, but a lot of the podcasts, they're all based in America essentially. They can get to the tournaments. They've met Alex Davey and Luke and all that at events, and they're on the podcast and all that kind of stuff. I was listening to the State of the Legion, whatever that one was, where they were on it just last night, and yeah, they've got a fantastic community there. They're all friends. They're all going to the same events and stuff like that. And I think obviously you'll be going back to the US, which in one hand might help you, but in Europe I think we have this little we've got language barriers, we've got geographical issues, but when we're doing stuff on the internet and we're doing this kind of content, we should be able to make some sort of content where we coexist, if that makes sense. This is as you say, an example of something like that. And when we do get to events like the London GT, you'll probably be back in the US at that point, so you won't necessarily be able to travel. But anybody who's there, I'll hopefully be meeting anybody in the UK who's already been making content, bloggers, whatever, all that kind of stuff. And even there's a small chance, and I'm not committing to this before anybody gets me on this. I've been talking to Ellis, who's running the event, and I might do the stream of it. So a little bit like the Fifth Trooper did. But then I was asking Jay from the Fifth Trooper, who's an incredibly nice man, spent a lot of time helping me with my stupid questions. And yeah, I was asking him about how he did it and all the machinery, and I'm like, so I can't do exactly what he did, but I might be able to do something on a more like basic level. But it's that kind of thing that we've never seen in Europe. We've never had like a streamed event really at the moment, so it can sort of feel like we're away from FFG and we're away from all the like community in a sense, and it would be nice for that to build up. I certainly think that.
Yeah, you do feel kind of isolated over here, but I think there's such a hunger for Legion content right now as this game is just growing and growing. And then with Clone Wars coming out, it's going to really explode. I feel that if you could do that, that would be awesome.
Sure.
Where I think
go
the podcasters really have the advantage is Jay Shalansky, who we're just talking about, mutual friend. He is the Aaron Spelling of Star Wars Legion podcast. He's, at one time, I think he was producing a full half of the Star Wars Legion podcast out there. So he kind of had his hands in a lot of things. And I think as a community builder, he's fantastic. Matter of fact, I have this relationship with Paint All the Minis, which we talked about. What I was able to do is talk to Dan Adam and got Jay to appear on the Paint All the Minis podcast for the Why I Love Star Wars Legion episode. And he did a fantastic job as an ambassador for the community talking about how awesome this game is. So I think he is part of what's making them so successful on the podcast side.
Sure, he's essentially a one-man community builder at the minute, which is putting the rest of us to shame. Not gonna lie, I'm not personally not doing too much, but I think it can be difficult as a content creator in that you want to spend the time building the content for your own channel and you want to help grow yourself. I know it sounds a bit weird, but yeah, for me I could run an event at one of the local stores, but whether or not I have the time to do it justice is another kind of question. So for sure, I think there is obviously a balance between building content, making content, and building a community for sure. YouTube-wise, I think when you consider a game like X-Wing, right? X-Wing, I would say at the moment is more popular than Legion, of course. I think in the UK right now there's an event where there's like 600 people in Milton Keynes all playing the system open. But I feel like for some reason X-Wing doesn't have a big presence on YouTube, whereas I think games like Legion might be able to. And I think that all comes down to like the hobby side of things. People like terrain, people like painting, people like the community in a sense. Whereas for X-Wing, you only have that like competitive side of things. So I think at the minute Legion is in that really like it's in its infancy stage, but I'm so excited about what it might bring. Like the Clone Wars is already bringing people into it just by being announced. And there's so much room, I think, on YouTube for it to grow that I'm happy to see. Like you started essentially 5-6 months ago doing Star Wars Legion. Have you found the community there? Have you people embraced it? Obviously, you were in the Paint All the Minis group, but have external people from that group embraced your channel?
So absolutely. Some of my old 40K fans have come forward and are now watching my Star Wars Legion content, which is exciting. My subscribers have gone, well, I don't want to say through the roof, but it has drastically improved the number of subscribers I had, and I've been blown away from the first video at the amount of views that we get. And I think part of that is, I did have an established fan base who watched those videos with me, but also there's not enough Star Wars Legion content out there, so there's definitely room for more content creators to come in and put their own spin on some of the Star Wars Legion content. But it's been fantastic. As a point of pride, where I respond to nearly every, if not every, comment posted on my videos, and I'm going to do that as long as I still can. And that interaction just really drives me to do more.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I try and respond to every comment, but sometimes YouTube will not even show me some comments, and I'll be scrolling through an old video, and I'll be like, that's a comment I literally never saw. So it can be quite difficult, especially if you if I make a video, if I do the video about the Clone Wars release, there's so many comments on that day that I'm like, I spend an hour just replying to everybody, being like, oh, that sounds good. So that can be difficult, but for sure, I think you make a good point though about there being, I don't want to say a gap in the market, but it's that 40k is saturated on YouTube. There's lots of people doing 40k content, some of it good, some of it not so great, but a lot of people put a lot of stuff out there. Whereas Legion, we like you could probably count the number of people either on one hand or at least two, and I think I'm excited to see people put more time and effort into it. I think that's going to be something, especially that happens with the Clone Wars. Like, what did you? I mean, on a scale of 0 to 10 on the Clone Wars, personally, will you be buying those factions?
So 10, we'll be buying both. Part of that is because I like to feature things like that on my channel. And then the other part of it is it has a special place in my heart because my son grew up watching Clone Wars cartoons with me. So definitely like to have that around.
That's interesting. I mean, you how big of a fan would you say you were from Star Wars? I'm gonna tell you the truth here that I am not really. I've said this many times. Not really a Star Wars fan. I am more of a Star Trek fan. I like my action, mainly people talking about their problems rather than people fighting with lightsabers and lightning coming out of their hands. But I realise that I'm probably in a minority to a lot of people. But where would you put yourself on the spectrum? A massive Star Wars fan before the originals?
Okay, so somewhere between dressing up in cosplay and just having seen the movie. So I'm kind of in between those two. I grew up with Star Wars action figures. Let's see, Return of the Jedi was released in '83, so I was 8 years old, obviously a big part of my childhood. And then being able to introduce my son to it, and he was really into it, so it got me into it as well. So I'd say probably an 8 out of 10.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. I realise I'm jumping about a bit here, but back to the Clone Wars a little bit. From what we've seen so far, the announcements, the releases that are coming out, if you had to pick like one unit or one character that you were the most excited about, that's been announced, not that's going to come, what would you pick out of the 6 things we've seen?
Easy, General Kenobi. He's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, did you see his leaked card, the spoiler card?
I did, yep.
Yeah, I mean, what's your thoughts on him? Because I saw him and I was like, he's very confusing in the fact that he's like aggressive and also defensive. But I guess, and he's called the Civilized Warrior, which I enjoyed. What's your thoughts on Kenobi, though?
So let's just start with the model. That classic General Kenobi Clone Wars pose. It's gonna be phenomenal to paint up and put on the table.
Sure.
Because I think the white really comes out well. As far as him as an actual character, there's a lot of hyperbole in the Star Wars Legion community about it's not even in the community. There's just some people in the community who use hyperbole a lot and will call things either garbage or overpowered, where I think what we've seen so far from Fantasy Flight Games is things are really well balanced, with a couple of exceptions, but even the things that are considered staples for Rebel list or Imperial list, you can change those out. You can still be competitive, you can still win. I think Kenobi's going to be more the same. I think he's going to be interesting in his ability to provide guardian to the very expensive clone troopers, and hopefully be able to surge on defense and deflect back at people. And
I'm
with his Master of the Force 1, force reflexes, he might have a dodge on every turn.
Sure, I'm not personally keen, and I've mentioned this on the on when I did the leaked video card. I'm not 100% keen of the idea of having Guardian on a model that costs 175 points. I think may not be like, it's worth having occasionally, but it's not something I think I would personally use. And it's hard because obviously I want to give, like, you talk about hyperbole and stuff like that, and it on YouTube especially, everybody knows that if you say something more shocking than somebody else, the person's more likely to click on the clickbaity title. If I say Obi-Wan Kenobi is garbage, he'll never be played, then people are going to flock. They'll be like, how can this be true? I hate this guy. How is it? So you get more of a reaction. So I can sort of understand it. I find myself sometimes trying to deliberately stay away from that, but at the same time you want to attract people. So for sure, I think Kenobi though specifically he's so interesting in the fact that he's going to have that dual role of defensive and aggressive that I'm not sure what I need to see it. I always say that, like, I need to see it played. And I think that comes to a lot of competitive things. I think FFG have done a great job balancing most of the game. There are certain, like, edge cases where, yeah, we see snipers in every list and we never see the Ion Rebel Trooper. But overall, the factions are balanced against each other quite well, and a lot of the units are balanced against each other quite well. Like, you could run a list of 2 Wookiees, Chewie and Han if you wanted, and still be okay. So with that in mind, how interested are you in the competitive scene? Like, obviously in Germany, I don't know anything about the competitive scene there, but how do you feel about that? Is that something you really want to get into? Are you looking forward to going back to the US so you can get into, like, all the worlds and Adepticons and LVLs and all that kind of stuff?
Yes and yes. So I'm really kind of curious where I stack up against other Legion players, because we have a pretty insular community over here, and as you've seen on my channel, most of us just recently picked up this game, haven't been playing it as long as some others, and don't get as many games in as some others. So what you're seeing is us learning as we put out these various episodes and getting better at the game. And I think that comes across pretty clearly, and that makes us really relatable. So I'm looking forward to getting back to the States and getting some more regular gameplay in, and then going to some of these bigger events, just because I was a solid to good 40K player, and I did well locally. I didn't go to any national tournaments, but I imagine I'm going to be the same in Legion, but I do kind of want to know where I stand there.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a pressure as well. I think when you do YouTube, I go to an event and several people will, like, recognize me at a tournament, and I'm like, God, I really don't want to be terrible. I really don't want to be terrible. I think Jay mentioned that in one of his podcasts. It could be a little bit.
Fear of Failure podcast.
Yeah,
is a good one.
It can be a little bit daunting, but I guess the end of the day is like, everybody has a bad game. Everybody has a bad day. Even if you go and you lose everything, it doesn't really matter. Like, as long as occasionally you do okay, like, it doesn't matter if you go and you absolutely stink. So, competitive wise, yeah, I think obviously the US at the minute has got a massive advantage because FFG are running, like, they've got the worlds there, and you've got invites to worlds at Adepticon and all that kind of stuff. But obviously the community members have stepped up there as well to actually, like, get those tournaments running. I think the organised play people in Europe have been possibly, no, I don't want to say lackluster, but they're taking their time building it up, I think. I'm hoping that we've got the Valley Point qualifiers this year. None have been announced anywhere outside of UK, Canada, and the US at the minute, but hopefully they'll get announced throughout the year. And then I'm really hoping that next year they put a little bit more, like, emphasis on the organised play kind of stuff, because yeah, I may never be, I may never make it to Worlds or whatever. I may never be the world's best. I'm not really expecting that, but I want to go to these events and just try my hardest and see where I end up. And I think, like, the organised play people will probably have realised that the fact that the game probably couldn't support, like, a 64-man tournament last year, whereas Ellis is running his London GT, which is going to be the biggest one in Europe so far, which is probably going to have 64 people. And
nice.
Yeah, that's going to be, I think that will be the start, essentially, of the competitive scene in Europe, because once we've got our first 64-man event, then I think, like, organised play FFG, they'll be like, all right, well, now we can have it at Nationals and we can have it at UK Game Expo, because the one event that they officially sanctioned was a side event at UK Nationals last year, and there was literally, like, 8 people in it. I finished bottom, by the way, just for anybody paying any attention. I finished bottom. I took Vader and finished last. Not my greatest moment in life. Yeah, so I think with that event, I felt like they were going to build it up from there, but it felt like they took a decision to just say, all right, well, we're going to wait a year and then we're going to build it up. And I'm very much excited. I really, like, I think because we're so into it that I really want it to be massive straight out the gate. But the reality is, you need people to paint the models, assemble the models, get their friends into the game, and you're going to have, when the game first came out, you obviously had a spike, then it dropped dramatically because people always go in and out of games, and then the key moment is, like, times like now, where the game is going to grow and steadily build because of stuff like Clone Wars and all the new stuff that's coming out. So competitive wise, I'm really excited what's to come. I'm very jealous of the Americans with all of the bloody massive tournaments and the 5th Trooper guys with the incredible studio cast video, which is embarrassing that mine, if we do it, will be like one camera and it'll just be me talking. But yeah, I'm like, I think there's a lot of room for that to, like, become a massive thing. And I think a game like Legion possibly lends itself to competitive play, it's definitely more over than something like 40k. Would you agree with that? Do you think the difference between like 40k and Legion, do you think Legion lends itself to a more competitive environment, whereas 40k lends itself to more like I know you said you went to events and stuff like that, but it always feels like the rule set in 40k where it's I do my first turn, then you do your entire turn, possibly leads itself to a little bit more variance. So how do you feel? What do you think, like 40k competitive versus Legion competitive? Which one would you rather be playing?
Oh, by far Legion competitive. I just had a game of 40k, and 40k is still a game I enjoy, and I have a lot of models for, and the models are brilliant. But there are certain games where you show up to play 40k, and your opponent has brought something that your army just can't deal with, and it's just a byproduct of having 16 factions, and everything from a 4-point little grot model to a 2,000-point Titan model. It really makes the competitive play difficult because you never know what you're going to walk into, and there's going to be some games where you just can't win. Where with all the models we have right now for Star Wars Legion and the gameplay being what it is, you don't have to worry about what you're going to face because there's only so many units on the Empire side, there's only so many units on the Rebel side. The way they've done the force organization is pretty brilliant in my estimation, where you can only have 2 commanders, you can only have 2 operatives, so the chance to skew list left or right are limited. And then the tools that you get with the game for measuring range and movement also lend itself to a good competitive experience. Where you started out though with was your YouTube fame kind of playing a part of your psyche when it comes to these events and wanting to do well. That has not been an experience I've yet had. No one has recognized me from my YouTube channel, so maybe when I get to the States that'll happen. It's funny because I had a guy, Jake, a good friend, appeared on the channel. He went back to the States before I did, and somebody recognized him as being on the channel. So he got that experience before I did, so I was a little jealous.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I feel weirdly awkward sometimes about it because the reality is I just make stupid YouTube videos. It's not like I'm not doing anything really worthwhile in the history of the universe. But when somebody goes, "I really like your channel," I'm like, yeah, great. I'm happy that's the case. But I just feel like, oh, okay. And then it puts pressure on me because it's like, what if they know that I lose all my games and I'm gonna be sat there thinking, oh god, this guy's gonna think I'm garbage. So
maybe I fixed that when I started out with Team Yankee, because when my buddy Simon said we need to get in Team Yankee, I said, you know what, that's fine. Just realize I've been training my entire life for a World War III combat game. So I'm going to wipe the floor with you, and it was the exact opposite. Simon regularly beat me in Team Yankee. So.
I mean, I'm not sure the reality versus a fictional model game would really stand you in good stead. But maybe it does. Maybe the strategy and tactics to convert. So have you found, maybe has that been different? That's a really weird question, but has that been different? Obviously, you're in the armed services, so do you find the way you think about games perhaps different from the way people who aren't?
So yeah, and to my detriment, I would say I see things as I think they should be and try to play to those things, whereas other people without that experience just look at the game mechanics and use a little game theory in order to win the game. So I think it definitely affects the way I play games, and sometimes to my detriment.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. You should do a video about that. I've been very intrigued in that myself. But yeah, I think that's yeah, I never really thought about it because obviously I'm just a gamer. I don't really I'm working in an office. I don't do anything interesting.
Same here.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, fantastic. What I would really like is like a war game based in Excel. A war game based in Excel. I might be okay with that. That would be my dream. So on your channel, I don't know. Do you mainly play Rebels? Is that correct?
So I play both Rebels and Imperials. We got an indoor campaign going on right now on the Paint All the Minis channel, where I'm the Imperials because my friend Max plays Rebels. But most of my German friends like to play Imperials, and just because I think it's more interesting. And all of my battle reports start with some sort of narrative aspect and end on some sort of narrative aspect. I always play the opposite faction of whatever my opponent wants to play. So I play both at this point.
Sure. I mean, I at the minute of the battle reports I've done, we've been playing opposite factions, but I think I'll probably move into some mirror matchups because when the reality is when you go to events and stuff like that, you do get mirror matchups. And when the factions that me and like the people I talk to in the UK play, there's a couple of people who will just be like, I like rebels, I play rebels, I'm not playing anything else, get lost. And then there's a couple of people who are just like a little bit more like me, and it's like I will play whatever I fancy playing across both the factions. And then if I'm going to an event, like I'm going to an event in a couple of weeks that I really want to win, so I'm going to take something that I think is really good. And so I'm going to take Luke Leia and just try and win. So like, yeah, it's weird. I think some people are like playing what's best, and then some people are playing what they want, and then some people are just playing like I like this faction only, and I don't care. So that's an interesting. It's an interesting skew there. What do you think about the factions at the minute? So I think the factions currently didn't necessarily have a massively strong identity. Like the Imperials are a little bit more defensive, the Rebels are a little bit... Well, yeah, the Imperials are more defensive in that they've got like higher saves and they're a bit tankier, shall we say. The Rebels are perhaps a little bit more, insurgency kind of esque, which sort of fits the style. How do you like those factions then? And then if you compare them to what we've seen of the Clone Wars, which seem to have real identities, like the droids being like a mass horde kind of battle, and the what they call the Republic being like elite soldiers.
Grand Army of the Republic.
Yeah, would you like to see maybe a separation between the Rebels and the Imperials in terms of identity?
So I think the criticism is fair, and it was certainly fair when the game first released, right, with the core set and the first couple of waves. I think where we're at now is they do have two separate play styles, where we're seeing the Imperials being able to lay on so much more suppression than the Rebels can. Death Troopers have suppressive weapons. With the Shore Troopers coming out, that mortar's going to have suppressive weapons. Vader gives suppression. I think they are the better save, but I think sometimes that is way too highly exaggerated. But they do have the better save, and they do throw out the suppression. Whereas the Rebels, I think, are more hero focused. And while they don't have more heroes, you can certainly play with more heroes in a Rebel list. Krennic shakes that up a little bit, but I think the Rebel Rebellion is really defined by the heroes that it can take between Luke, Leia, Han. Jyn now is a great choice. We're getting Sabine and Chewbacca. I think all of those influence how the Rebels play more than a typical Imperial list is influenced by maybe the one leader it can bring.
Yeah, sure. I think everything you just said there is pretty much bob on. The characters are, in a weird way, sort of more flavorful on the Rebels. That they more have like the more different, I guess, is a weird way of saying that. Whereas obviously the Imperials are not one-dimensional, but a little less like extravagant in a way. And the
Imperials certainly don't get what the Rebels do when it comes to teamwork and things like that. And the way the Rebels hero bounce tokens around and really supplement each other on the tabletop. The Imperials, who can run a couple heroes, they don't get that advantage that the Rebels clearly get.
Sure, I think that's true, yeah. And it was so exciting when I saw that the droids for the Clone Wars it's like you will be literally be able to take like a horde army, which I obviously do not want to paint, but obviously, yeah, I love the fact that they've got that strong identity from the off. And then if you say the Rebels and the Imperials are getting their stronger identity, this then leads me on to what would you like to come next after the Clone Wars? We're going to get... Well, I guess we'll have two questions here. Is there a specific unit or character you really want to see announced that's not been announced? And then secondly, if you were to really... if you wanted a faction, what new faction would your heart's desire want?
I'm looking forward to Captain Cassian Andor. I think he's going to be a great character on the Rebel side. As far as new faction, what Imperial Assault had, which I thought was a lot of fun, was a scum and villainy faction that could go on either side. And I think there's a lot of room in the Star Wars universe for these like free mercenary units to go and be picked up by any side in the game. It doesn't look like that's going to happen based off of what Alex Davey and what he had said, but I think that would be a lot of fun. You know, some of the bounty hunters could go either side, or, you know, a unit of pirates fighting on either side would have been a lot of fun.
Sure, yeah, I think in the podcast, or even on the interview at the panel, they were saying that the neutral stuff probably is unlikely, but they did mention about possible sub-factions, stuff like Gungans and Geonosians and all that kind of stuff, which, I mean, I sort of really want Gungans. There's just something about me, like, weirdly, not being a Star Wars fan, I don't have the hate towards the prequels that a lot of people have. So I actually really admire the aesthetics of the prequels. And I really like the idea of just annoying people with Jar Jar Binks. Like, something just really like excites me about that as a prospect. So I very much would like some factions, and I think they could do it quite quickly, because all they would really need would be, for example, Wookiees. If you slightly mixed up the rules a little bit, maybe in the core set, you could have like a core unit of Wookiees, and then you've got Chewie. You could maybe make him the leader somehow, and you could have like a sub faction sort of predefined somewhere off, like somewhere in the rule book that had these like sub factions. So yeah, that it's actually stuff coming forward for me. I really like the idea of sub factions. Obviously, we are going to get at some point we'll get the new trilogy, I don't know what the J.J. Abrams universe trilogy. Obviously, we had the trailer for that yesterday, which we won't spoil too much, but are you excited about that? What are your thoughts on the new films? Obviously, some people have had mixed reactions.
I'm a fan, so yeah, I came out of episode 8 especially, and kind of shake my head at some parts, but overall I really enjoy the experience, and I'm looking forward to episode 9 coming out, and I'm going to be able to watch that in the theater in the States with nice big comfy chairs and American-sized 2-liter soda and whatnot. So,
but will people cheer? That's what I can't handle. People clapping and cheering in the cinema. Will they do that?
Oh, you know what? Yes, they will, depending where you go. You know, it's been kind of fun since I am in the service. We do like special viewings over here sometimes, and we did one for my unit where guys from the 501st Legion came, and we just made a big production out of it, right? And my wife wore her Mickey Mouse ears with the light up X-Wings and TIE Fighters, and it was just a family affair with lots of cheering and lots of fun. So I'm going to miss that because it won't be that crazy, but yeah, they will probably cheer and stuff like that in the States. Sure. Yeah,
being British, this is against everything I believe in. Like, I demand total silence and reserve. I can't handle exuberance. I need everybody to be like, nobody claps. People just silently get out of their chairs when the big, even if people laugh at comedy films, I look at them with disgust. I'm like, you can't laugh. Laugh internally. It's outrageous. But I think I watched Batman, the really good Batman. I can't remember which one it was, the middle one.
Dark Knight.
Yeah, and I watched that whilst I was in the US, and oh my god, like, it was. To be fair, the film was amazing, so I actually didn't mind the audience getting a bit excited and exuberant in that one. But yeah, generally, me and my partner Katie will try and book. We go to a cinema with comfy seats, and we'll book a day off work, so we're doing it in the day, and we're doing it like first thing in the morning, and we go to an over 18 showing so that there's no kids, because I really don't want to be distracted whilst I'm enjoying these films. And I've got to say, the trailer, I was getting goosebumps during the trailer. We obviously won't talk about it too much, but I was getting significant goosebumps. I would very much really, really like to see that in Legion very quickly. I don't know about you.
I'm not too much in a hurry, to be honest. Right now, I've already fallen behind on things I need to get. Like, I got 1 unit of Death Troopers and no Krennic. I need to pick up a 2nd unit of Death Troopers and a Krennic. I don't have any Pathfinders. These are all things. I don't have a Jin that I just haven't been able to either source here in Germany with English cards, or sorry about that, or there's the affordability aspect to it as well. I think when we're talking about people who just play one faction, they probably do it right, and that they can get everything.
Yeah,
I'm also getting to the point where I don't necessarily need everything in a faction, so that will be interesting to see where that goes, because I think you can play Imperials in a number of ways, in some ways that haven't even been fully explored yet, which won't require you to have multiples of each unit.
Sure, I think for certain there's a couple of interesting things that are going to happen with that, with regards to um, once. Well, there's a couple of things we talked about there. The catching up in paint terms. I own everything, but everything's in a well, not everything, but quite a few things are in boxes that are just unassembled, unpainted. I might never even use them properly. And a bit of me thinks, like, why did I do that if I'm not going to use, like, 4 units of specialists or whatever I may have? So there's definitely an element of don't buy stuff you don't need. That leads on to an affordability part of it as well. Like, you don't have to buy everything. You just have to buy the list that you find the most interesting. And I think the extra factions are going to help with that, because instead of, it being one new stuff for your faction every month or every other month, it might end up being, well, if you just play Rebels, maybe you're only going to get something every 3 or 4 months. And that becomes then a much more affordable, even if you wanted everything, because you only have to spend your money every so often. Personally, it's not going to affect me because I'm going to buy everything because I'm a lunatic and this is my main thing. So yes, but I think
you also make tens of dollars a month on this YouTube channel, right?
Oh, I'm going broke. My partner's not happy about it. We're getting married next month, and I'm not sure I can afford it. So,
congratulations! Everything gets immediately reinvested back in the channel, and you end up, in a deficit.
Yeah, for sure. I spend way more money than I make. It's not even a question. It's not even a factor in my decision making at the moment. So I think for a lot of people, for new people coming into the game, I think the new factions are just so good on on so many levels. But specifically, one, you can collect a faction and it's not going to cost you as much to buy everything, and two, the new factions are going to bring new people into the game, so there's fresh meat on the table, boys. So there's going to be more players. You're going to be able to find games. So in that sense, I'm really happy about the new factions and it's slowing down. I just talked about the new. It's just when you watch the episode 9 trailer, and you hear certain things in the trailer and you just get so excited about it. I'm like, I could play that right now if that was the thing. So I think the good thing about Star Wars Legion, Alex Davey on the podcast with the 5th Trooper of the State of the Legion one, they were talking about how the game could be around for like a decade minimum. And then moving to sprues is a great sign of the health of the game. So I think there's so much to look forward to that it's easy for me to get a little bit ahead of ourselves. But, it's only going to be 4 months, maybe 5 months before we get the Clone Wars. And I'm so hyped about that. It's so good. I think that's going to be a really interesting, change to the game. You'll be in the US at that point? When you get to the US?
Yes.
Are you going to have a group of people to play with? Is that going to be something you've got?
Yeah, I got a group of people lined up already in St. Louis, my hometown. So once we get the studio set up and everything like that, and I play these people in a store every once in a while, so I get to know them and then have them over the house. We're going to get restarted up on the channel, but there will be a short break there. Going back to the factions and sub-factions, things like that, I think the most important thing right now is to keep the game balanced. I have every confidence in the 2 developers for this game and that they're going to do that. But I know a lot of people are more skeptical than me on that because they've played other game systems, to include other Fantasy Flight game systems, so I understand that. But right now I think the 2 individuals who are leading the development of this game have earned my trust. And I would much rather see a steady release schedule. And to be frank, the release schedule has been bananas. They've put out a ton of stuff this first year. But I'd like to see them maintain rather than increase that in order to maintain balance in the game.
Sure, and when it comes to balance, I think we've seen that they're not afraid to change things, like key positions. Yeah, obviously we've not necessarily seen a broken card. The most broken, I say most broken, that's hyperbole that we're talking about before, is probably the snipers that they're in almost every single list that may not deserve to be there, but they're not so bad that people are up in arms and quitting the game. It's just they're in every list. That's probably the worst thing about that. But for sure, they're not afraid to fix things on the fly. They've changed the key positions rule just to make the game more balanced. The one thing I personally would like to see, if we're talking about balance, is I don't like strength of schedule. I would like to see it to go to something else other than strength of schedule, because I think tournaments should be decided more on the play rather than the chance of play. But I mean, I'm nitpicking the game, as you say, is pretty damn balanced for sure. yes, there's certain things in your list or in your faction that you wouldn't generally pick, the Earthspeeder being the classic example of that, but generally you can pick most things and have a decent chance against most other things, which I think is the sign of a good game and a good balance.
Yeah, absolutely. So you bring up strength of schedule. What I have not been able to wrap my head around yet, and I've asked for people to kind of explain to me, and no one's done it really well, is this whole cut thing that we have in tournaments. Like, you're going to play 3 games, but only the top 8 are going to play a 4th game. I want to play games. Why am I cut out of playing a 4th game if I want to keep playing? And the common response I get is it's more competitive. I don't see how that relates. If I'm at the bottom table, I'm not affecting people at the top table. I'm just playing another game. So your gripe might be with strength of schedule. Mine is with the cut system.
I never really thought about that. I guess what we might have at the London GT, and I'd have to speak to Alice about this, is on the Friday they're going to have a doubles game, so that's more chill and fine. And I think that he might have a cut maybe for the Sunday for people who dropped on the Saturday, because I think essentially there's a lot of people who drop when they can't win, which is unfortunate. But that some people do.
As a data-driven guy, I'd like to see some data on that, because
sure.
We had very few drops at both the LVO and Adepticon Last Chance qualifier, and of course High Command. I'm not even sure that's true.
No, neither am I. I'm not going to claim it as fact, for sure. And I think so. What they might do is a side event on the Sunday, which I think then makes sense. If you're going to have you can't win this, you're not in the top 8, then you can play this side event. But I sort of understand the point. Like, there's no point having a cut if there's nothing for some people to do. Like, if there is no activity to replace the cut. If you're not made the cut, what do you do? It's not like golf. The golfers who don't make it in the Masters, they're just going home. That's fine. They're minted anyway. They're not bothered. But if you've come to an event, you've travelled miles and miles to get there, and you play 3 games, you lose 2, you're not made the cut. Yeah, I can appreciate that. You may be a bit I want to play some games. It makes sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't generally we've in the UK we've not had an event with a cut, so it's not necessarily been a problem at the moment. But for sure, I can imagine that would be a bit of a gripe if you do want to play games. So, we'll start wrapping things up, I guess. I'm happy to see your YouTube channel going to Star Wars Legion. Not that I dislike 40k or anything, but I'm a much bigger fan of Legion, and I obviously hope you continue doing that. And I think Master of the Force has definitely shown that there's definitely, and your channel has definitely shown there's definitely an appetite for the battle reports, and obviously hopefully you enjoy doing them, and hopefully you'll keep creating them.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of Legion right now in 40k too, so we have that in common. Can I just add one thing before we wrap up?
For sure.
We talked a lot about competitive Legion, but Legion is such a great game. It lends itself to narrative play as well. So all the battle reports I put up on Paint All the Minis are narrative focused. So those are where we put, if we play an FFG operation, I put those up on Paint All the Minis, and those are for make for some interesting games. And then Maxville and I created a 3-game indoor campaign that we're filming and putting up on Paint All the Minis. I think as good as this game is competitively, it is just as good doing a narrative garage gaming beer and pretzel type game with, and I think there's a lot of room for that as well, because the Star Wars universe is just full of big stories, and with the characters we've been given and the units we've been given by FFG, we can definitely create our own stories, and it's been a lot of fun doing the narrative side as well. Sure,
I'm a little bit guilty, I think, of ignoring the narrative side of things because it's just something I'm personally not interested in. I understand a lot of people are. It's just something that I've never, individual preference, isn't it?
Sure.
It's just something that I personally don't care for. But I'm really excited to see stuff like FFG doing the Down Day TST, which is going to have the little mission cards and stuff like that. And obviously people are more than free to run those operations. And as you're doing, creating your own little campaign and stuff like that. I think, as you say, it's a game that perfectly lends itself to that. 40k also lends itself to that, but I think the difference mainly between 40k and Legion is that yes, they can both do narrative stuff, but for me on a competitive level, Legion is the superior game. So
absolutely agree.
That's where I focus my time and effort. Even though I'm never going to be that top tier world ranking #1 player or what have you, but Yeah, they're very much guilty of that, and a lot of people do just play casually. You know, maybe they get their kids and they paint the minis up, and they'll have a 300-point game on a table of terrain that they've made. And for certain, like I think the community is doing a decent job of making like campaigns available and all that kind of stuff. And
I think highly focused on the competitive side, to be honest. I think the podcasts are focused there. I think most YouTube channels are focused there. I think there's a much broader audience that probably isn't being served greatly because I don't think we put enough focus on the narrative.
Sure, that's probably true for certain. I think a lot of people are just interested in casual fun. I'm going to paint my minis in a casual way and spend my time converting them and make my own little stories with my friends. And yeah, I don't know who's... Obviously, you're on Paint All the Minis, which obviously I would recommend that you go and check out. But apart from that, I think there's a gentleman in my Discord, actually, whose channel name really is escaping me in a minute. It's Dice... Oh, it's Dice something. I'll put a link in the description. But basically, he's doing narrative videos for Legion as well, sort of like battle reports, and he's making his own campaign and all that kind of thing. His name's Bob, but I can't remember his channel name, so he's going to hate me once he sees this. But
he's definitely going to hate you.
I'll put a link in the description if you want to check it out, because it's pretty decent. Yeah, for sure, certain. I think Legion as a whole has a lot of scope to grow in many aspects, not just narrative. I think it can grow in campaigns, it can grow in like presence for tournaments and stuff like that. And all in all, I'm like really excited about what the future can bring. And I'm very grateful to you for the helping the genesis of this chat, this podcast kind of thing, because I'm with you. It like really, I hadn't really been focused on community. I've been focused on myself because I'm very selfish and I love myself, and you know, it makes sense. So I'm very grateful to you, and hopefully
it's the Ayn Rand philosophy of why we do things.
Yeah. So it makes sense, and I'm grateful to you. I mean, just having just even a brief chat in somebody else's like stream just started the brain cells kicking over. So I'm very grateful to you for that. And hopefully we'll see more. Like I'm going to interview not just YouTubers, but I'm going to try and interview like community members and all that kind of stuff. But I'm very grateful for you to coming on today. If you've obviously not, I should have probably said this at the start, but yeah, it's too late now because it's near the end. But if you've not already checked out War Corgi's channel, there will obviously be a link in the description below. What I might even do is just edit me in saying this at the start, because this is the power of a recorded video. I get to go back in time and do stuff. So yeah, definitely. Definitely check out War Corgi's YouTube channel and Paint All the Minis, of course.
Of course.
You've heard the differences here if you want to check out both. And I can definitely confirm fantastic battle reports. Definitely should check that out. I mean, Legion going forward, we've got the Clone Wars, we've got everything interesting. Is there anything you want to say to anybody?
Yeah, so I've mentioned Simon, who appears frequently on my channel. I've mentioned Max. I haven't mentioned Michael yet. Michael is one of the best painters I personally know, and every time he comes on the channel, I'm just blown away. You might have gotten a chance to check out his General Veers on either Facebook or on my channel, and he's only been playing the game for like 6 weeks, and the last time we played, he beat me in a very close game, but he's growing in leaps and bounds, and his painting ability is phenomenal, so I did want to give him a shout out. So I appreciate you having me on the inaugural episode of the podcast, and it's been a lot of fun, Jay. I do appreciate it, and I'm a big fan of your channel. You did mention earlier, the broken cards. I was a huge fan of your top 10 most broken cards, most broken units video, and I thought it was really funny because like every time you introduce something, you would immediately caveat with it, well, it's probably not that broken, but...
Yeah, that is part of the problem. It's like, I've mentioned this on YouTube, you want to be controversial, but at the same time, you've got to be more like realistic. And Legion's so well balanced that even the unbalanced things are only mildly unbalanced. It's not like in like X-Wing, there was like cases of triple jump masters and all this kind of stuff that were just like so broken for a long time. And we don't have any of that. So
no, we sure don't. It made it for a fun video. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, and sometimes I just need video ideas. So I just I just rehash my video ideas, redo them. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. As I said, all the links to all the channels that we mentioned will be in the description below. Thank you very much, Michael, for joining us. You're going to be leaving Germany soon. I wish you all the best with your travels, and obviously hope to see the videos continue with your new community that you foster in Oh, did you say St. Louis? We don't have an NFL team.
Missouri.
Is that the one that don't have the NFL team anymore because they moved? Is that the St. Louis? This is my NFL knowledge, which isn't very good, so I'm going to swiftly move on with my life.
Well, so St. Louis is really a baseball town, which is a lot like cricket for you guys.
Oh, I know baseball.
Okay, good. I know cricket as well. I served with some guys in Afghanistan who introduced me to cricket. Great game, by the way. So I think the Rams might have left, but I'm not sure anybody really noticed. So
fair enough. Well, thank you very much. I do really appreciate that. That'll be the end. You know, wherever you're watching this or listening to this, subscribe to all the channels. I don't know what you do on iTunes. Do you subscribe to a podcast? I have no idea.
Yeah, you do.
You do subscribe. Well, subscribe.
Yeah.
And if you're on YouTube,
absolutely,
then like and subscribe. And as ever, though, have a most beautiful day. And goodbye. I'll let Michael also say goodbye.
I'm just going to say, when you have me back on, episode 20 or whatever, we can talk about where the War Corgis come from.
Oh.
But it's been a pleasure.
Oh, I didn't even think.
Thanks,
Damn.
everybody.
Goodbye.
This is why you got to have me back. See, this is how I